So a few months ago, I went to this thing called Men of Faith. And while I was there, there's a deacon from my church who was talking about the ability to see joy in suffering in your life. And afterwards we had discussion, and he was actually at my table. And he was talking about how he was in the hospital and he had this disease and he wasn't sure if he was going to make it. He's praying the rosary with his wife. And we're sitting around this table, and our table leader asked the table, have you been able to see joy in suffering in your life? And the first thing I thought of was this wreck I was in on December 14th, 2015. You see, I was serving on Net Ministries, the national evangelization teams. It's been going on for about 36 years now. And we would travel around the country doing retreats for middle school and high school youth. We were a day away from getting back to the Net Center before we went home for Christmas. We were in Colon, Nebraska, and we were 2 streets down from the host home we were staying with. And something went wrong with the GPS, and we tried to turn around. There was construction, so we had to turn around. And we got caught across this highway. And so my friend Tyler got out, and he's directing traffic with a flashlight. And things are going fine at first, and we're trying to back up. And then this man, he was about 88 years old. He comes down the road going about 70 miles an hour. And so Tyler, he's jumping up and down with this flashlight, and the guy just didn't see him. And at the last second, Tyler jumped out of the way, and he hit our back right side going about 70 miles an hour. And so when it happened, I was crushed in between 2 of the biggest guys on my team sitting next to me. My glasses flew off my face, but I have this crucifix. And this crucifix, I had actually lost it. And 30 minutes before the wreck, I found it. So my glasses flew off, but I held on to this cross. And afterwards, my friend Tyler, he's yelling at all of us to get out of the van because we don't know if another car's going to hit us. We all got out except my friends Celia and Samantha, who were stuck in the back. And so Tyler's dealing with the team, and I got back in. And I'm with Celia, and she has blood coming down her face, and she has blood coming out her mouth. And we're trying to determine, do we get her out or not? Because the lifeguard in me is saying, no. Like neck injury, head injury, you do not want to mess with that. But we're still in the middle of a highway. We don't know if another car is going to hit us. And so I just started praying. You see, this crucifix, it's specifically for healing. And I had lost it, but I found it those 30 minutes before the wreck. And so I just started praying over her. And I was praying for healing for her, and nothing was working. And so I finally asked for the intercession of this man named Father Emil Capon. I actually have a wristband that says Father Emil Capon that's for him, and I just finished reading a book on him. And as soon as I said, Father Emil Capon, do what you can do, Celia mumbled out the word ankle. You see, my friend Samantha, she kept asking Celia, what's wrong, what's wrong? And she couldn't tell us. And all she said was ankle. And her ankle wasn't badly hurt, but the plastic of the side of the van had popped around it. And that's why I couldn't pick her up. And so I just held her still. I held her still until the EMTs got there. And they actually had to saw her out of the van and fly her to the hospital. And so later that night, we're in the hospital. And my team, we're in shambles. We were told by people at the hospital that Celia might not make it. One of the guys on my team was actually told that she was dead. And we're sitting there, and one of my friends came over to me, this girl that we were supposed to stay with that night, and she said, Chandler, you were so strong. You see, we were sitting there, and although all this was going on, I kept seeing God in that moment. I knew He was there with us. And one of the most difficult things for me is I wanted to share that with my team. I wanted to share it with the people around me, but they didn't want to hear it. And I understood that. I mean, we just found out that a girl on our team might die. And they didn't want to hear that God was with us. They didn't want to hear that He was there in that moment. But I kept seeing Him. And so in the weeks that ensued afterwards, my friend Celia, she was in the hospital for a month and a half with brain trauma and a broken pelvis. In the first 2 weeks in the hospital, she didn't even know her own name. She didn't know her parents' names. She didn't know who she was. But something that helped her later is what her mother told her. that while she was in the hospital those first 2 weeks, each night she would pray. That she didn't know who she was, but she still knew who God was, that something in her was reaching out to him. That every night she would pray. And after 2 weeks, she did remember her own name. And today she's fully recovered. She's in college. She has no struggle from the pelvis. She has no problems with the brain trauma. So about 6 months after the wreck, I went to serve my second year with Net Ministries. And I was still struggling to be in a van. I was afraid. And I'm talking to God. I'm like, God, like how am I supposed to do this? How am I supposed to travel around and do these retreats if I'm afraid to even get in a van? And I had a friend pray over me. And while he was praying over me, I just realized that God doesn't give us the promise that we're not going to be hurt. He wouldn't give me the promise that I wasn't going to be in a wreck again. But the promise he did give me is that he would be with me every step of the way. That he would be with me in that suffering. And so the next day, I was in a car and we're taking a left turn, and how close the car was, that normally would have scared me. But it just didn't. That it just didn't bother me anymore. And through that wreck, he helped me grow in trust. And so shortly after that, I actually had injured my ankle. And I was on this knee scooter and I was loving it. Going around with this knee scooter. I had the horn on the knee scooter, a little clown horn. And I'm going around on this, and this girl came over to me. She said, Chandler, thank you. Because I saw you with an injured leg and you were just so happy. And I couldn't help but be happy when I saw you over here injured, but still being joyful. And I looked at her and I was like, are you kidding me? This is just a leg. This is nothing. I get to ride around on a knee scooter and I'm injured, so no one tells me what to do. It's great. But it just made me think about how a year after the wreck, that next Christmas, my dad asked me, what are you most thankful for the past year? And immediately I said the wreck. Because it was through that time and time again, God taught me to trust him. That he was with me and that he loved me. And my whole team, we're okay. We're better than okay. We have a relationship with God. My friend Celia, she made a video talking about her experience of the wreck and how thankful she is for it. That yes, she went through this traumatic suffering, but it opened her up to God so much. That literally made her trust him with everything she had, that she got to a point to where she knew nothing but him. And so yes, suffering happens, and we don't always know the reason why. Sometimes later we find out, sometimes we don't. But know that God is with you in your suffering, and that there's joy to be found. You see, I was sitting at that table at Men of Faith, and one of the guys said, it's okay to be angry. It's okay to say, God, I'm so pissed that this is happening right now. But the key is, afterwards, to come back to him and say, but Jesus, I trust in you. In this suffering, I still trust in you. So 30 minutes before the wreck, I told my friend Josh 2 stories. The first one is, my grandma always says it's better to be late for your wreck than early. Well, we were on time. Kind of ironic. And the second one is that there's a family friend of ours who, this couple, they were at this grocery store. They're a married couple, and the husband walked up behind his wife, and she was kind of in this weird ointment section. And so he walks up behind her and he whispers in her ear, so, you got a problem with your butt? And it wasn't his wife. And so this woman was mortified, and he felt so sorry. His wife was down the aisle, witnessed this whole thing, and was just dying laughing. They had the same haircut, were wearing the same clothes. Honest mistake. But ever since then, my family's always had the saying, so, you got a problem with your butt? And so Josh, when we were in the hospital, he literally got medical papers saying he had nothing wrong with him but a bruise on his butt. And so 3.5 hours after the wreck happens, we're about to go to bed. We're in this host home. We're standing there looking at each other. And in all the seriousness of what was going on, I looked at him dead in the eye. And I said, "So, you got a problem with your butt?" And we just laughed. And even though we were going through this scary situation, there was still joy to be found. And praise God that I was able to find joy in that time, because it's all Him. It's all His grace. And so maybe you're at college and you're struggling and you don't know why you're at where you're at, or you're working, or whatever the situation is. Know that He's with you and that He loves you. And that's pretty amazing. So, thank you guys for watching. Love you guys.